I'll never forget the way the light hit Lauren's face that evening, her eyes glowing like she'd just won the lottery. She was standing in our kitchen, clutching a plastic stick like it was a holy relic. "Miles," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." My heart stopped. After 15 years of trying, of tears and tests and treatments, here it was, our miracle. I dropped the grocery bags, apples rolling across the hardwood, and pulled her into my arms. She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. I started babbling about cribs, names, schools, my mind racing like a sous chef prepping for a dinner rush. I've always had this thing, you see, a food critic's knack for noticing the tiniest details. It's why I can tell if a sauce is off by a pinch of salt. And that's why, even in my joy, I caught it. The way Lauren's smile faltered when I asked how far along she was. "Oh, about 8 weeks," she said, too quickly, her fingers tightening around the test. 8 weeks? I did the math. Our last attempt was over 3 months ago, after another failed treatment. But I shook it off. Miracles don't follow timelines, right? I spent the night planning, dreaming, sketching nursery layouts in my head. Lauren, though, was quieter than usual, her laughter replaced by a nervous energy I couldn't quite place. By morning, I was already calling contractors, ready to turn our spare room into a baby's paradise. But then my phone buzzed, a reminder for a routine doctor's appointment I'd almost forgotten. Just a checkup, I thought, nothing serious. I kissed Lauren goodbye, promising to pick up paint samples on the way home. Little did I know, that appointment was about to shatter everything I thought I knew about my miracle. Driving to the doctor's, my mind drifted back to the years we'd spent fighting for this moment. Infertility isn't just a medical condition. It's a thief, stealing hope one negative test at a time. Lauren and I met in high school, two kids from small-town Ohio dreaming of a big, loud family. We married at 23, bought this fixer-upper in Columbus, and waited for the kids to come. But they didn't. By year 5, we were in clinics, handing over our savings for shots, scans, and promises that never panned out. I remember the fights, Lauren blaming me blaming her, both of us blaming fate. She started pulling away, spending more time at a fertility support group she found online. I thought it was good for her, seeing her come home with a spark in her eye again. But there were other changes, too, ones I ignored. Like the nights she'd come home late, her hair damp from a shower she claimed she'd taken at the gym. Or the time I found a bottle of cologne in her purse, some sharp, citrusy scent I'd never worn. I told myself it was nothing, just paranoia from the stress. My grandfather, a retired detective, always said the truth hides in the details, Miles. Look for the cracks. I wish I'd listened then. Instead, I focused on keeping us together, cooking her favorite meals, roasted lamb with rosemary, her comfort food, hoping it'd bridge the gap growing between us. But now, with her pregnant, none of that mattered, right? We'd won. As I pulled into the doctor's parking lot, I felt lighter than I had in years. The baby was our fresh start, proof we could overcome anything. I checked in, flipping through a parenting magazine, grinning like a fool. But then the doctor called me in, his face too serious for a routine visit. "Miles," he said, holding a file, "we need to talk about your results." And just like that, the crack in our miracle widened into a chasm. Dr. Patel's office smelled like antiseptic and bad news. I sat across from him, still buzzing from Lauren's announcement, expecting a quick chat about vitamins or blood pressure. But his expression, tight lips, furrowed brow, told me this wasn't routine. "Miles," he started, sliding a sheet of paper across the desk, "I got your results from last week's tests." I nodded, confused. Last week, I'd done a full workup, blood, urine, the works, just to make sure I was in top shape for fatherhood. "Everything's fine, right?" I asked, my voice too cheerful. He sighed, tapping the paper. "Not exactly. Your sperm analysis shows azoospermia, zero viable sperm. It's not a new condition. It's likely been this way for years." The room tilted. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but his eyes were steady, unyielding. "That's impossible," I said, my voice cracking. "Lauren's pregnant." 8 weeks, she said. "We did it." Dr. Patel leaned back, his chair creaking. "I'm sorry, Miles. Based on these results, you couldn't have fathered child. Not now, not ever. My mind raced, grasping for explanations. A mix-up, a lab error, a miracle. Anything but the truth staring me in the face. I demanded a retest, my voice louder than I intended. These things happen, I insisted. Machines mess up, right? He shook his head. We double-checked. It's definitive. But then I remembered something. Lauren's insistence on natural conception, even after the doctors suggested donor options. She'd said she wanted it to be just us. Had she known? Had she lied? I left the office in a daze. The test results crumpled in my fist. Outside, the Ohio spring felt too bright, too cruel. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every moment of the past 8 weeks. The joy on Lauren's face, the way she'd held that test. Was it all an act? My grandfather's voice echoed in my head. The truth hides in the details. And the detail I couldn't shake? The cologne. The late nights. The crack in our miracle was splitting wide open, and I needed to know what lay beneath. I drove home in a fog, Dr. Patel's words looping in my head. You couldn't have fathered a child. It couldn't be true. Not after everything we'd been through. Not after Lauren's tears, her joy, our miracle. I told myself it was a mistake. Lab screw up, doctors misread charts. But the doubt was there, sharp as a knife through butter, cutting into every memory I had of the past few months. I thought of Lauren's behavior, the little things I'd brushed off. The way she'd started wearing makeup again, not just for date nights, but for support group meetings. The way she'd laugh at texts she wouldn't let me see, claiming they were girl stuff. I'd ignored it all, too desperate to keep our marriage afloat. But now, those details glowed like neon signs in a dark alley, impossible to miss. My grandfather always said, "Denial's a warm blanket, Miles, but it won't hide the truth." I tried to wrap myself in that blanket anyway, convincing myself there was an explanation. Maybe the tests were wrong. Maybe I'd miraculously healed. Maybe, but then I remembered Lauren's words at our last doctor's visit, 6 months ago. If it's not natural, I don't want it, she'd said, vetoing donor options. It has to be us. If she'd meant that, how was she pregnant now? By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands were shaking. Lauren was in the kitchen, humming, chopping vegetables for dinner. The normalcy of it, her apron, the smell of garlic, felt like a slap in the face. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my grandfather's voice stopped me. Never confront without evidence, Miles. Find the cracks first. So I forced a smile, kissed her cheek, and said, "Doctor's visit went fine." She nodded, not meeting my eyes, and handed me a carrot to peel. But as I stood there, knife in hand, I noticed something new, a faint tan line on her wrist, like she'd been wearing a bracelet I'd never seen. And that's when I knew I couldn't deny it anymore. I needed to find the truth, no matter how much it hurt. That night, I waited until Lauren was in the shower, the water drowning out my footsteps. I needed answers, but I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. My grandfather's lessons were my guide. Start with what's hidden, Miles. People bury their lies where they think you won't look. I grabbed her phone from the nightstand, my heart pounding like a drum in a quiet kitchen. The screen was locked, but I knew her passcode, our anniversary 0523. The irony wasn't lost on me. I scrolled through her texts, expecting to find something, anything, to explain the impossible pregnancy. But the messages were clean, too clean. No group chats, no late-night threads, just a few mundane exchanges with her sister and a coworker. Had she deleted everything? I was about to give up when I noticed a notification from an app one didn't recognize, something called Secure Chat. It was locked behind a second passcode. My stomach twisted. Why would she need that? The shower stopped, and I slipped the phone back, my mind racing. When Lauren emerged, wrapped in a towel, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She froze, her eyes darting to the nightstand, then back to me. "About what?" she asked, too casual. "The baby," I said, watching her face. "How is this possible, Lauren? The doctor says I can't." Her expression crumpled, tears welling up before I could finish. "How dare you doubt me?" she cried, clutching the towel tighter. "After everything we've been through, You think I'd lie about this? It's a miracle, Miles. But her tears didn't match her eyes. There was no sadness there, only panic. I pressed on, my food critics, catching every detail. The way her hands shook, the way she wouldn't meet my gaze. If it's a miracle, I said, then why are you hiding something on your phone? Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she'd confess. But then she turned it on me, her voice sharp as a chef's knife. You're paranoid, Miles. You always have been. And that's when I saw it. A text lighting up her screen from R. Just one word, tonight. That text, tonight, burned into my brain like a branding iron on a steak. I couldn't confront Lauren again, not without more. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head. Start with what's hidden, Miles. People bury their lies where they think you won't look. I waited until Lauren was asleep, her breathing steady, before slipping out of bed. Her phone was on a nightstand, but I knew secure chat was a dead end without the passcode. Instead, I went for her laptop, tucked away in the study. I'd seen her use it for support group stuff, but now I wondered what else it held. The password was easy. Our dog's name, Bailey. My food critics, I caught every detail as the screen lit up. A clutter of files, but one folder stood out, labeled support. Inside, I found meeting notes, schedules, and names, dozens of women from her fertility group. But then I saw something else, an email draft, never sent, addressed to R. It read, I can't keep doing this. Miles is starting to ask questions. My stomach churned. Doing what? I scrolled through her inbox, searching for more, but found nothing. Just a suspiciously clean slate, like she'd scrubbed it. My grandfather always said, when evidence disappears, look for what's left behind. I checked her deleted emails, and there it was, a message from R, dated 3 weeks ago. Meet me at the cafe. We need to talk about the next step. Cafe. Next step? I memorized the date and time, my mind racing. Lauren stirred in the bedroom, and I quickly closed the laptop, slipping back into bed. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, piecing together the cracks in her story. The late nights, the cologne, the tan line on her wrist, it all pointed to something bigger than a pregnancy lie. By morning, I made a decision. I needed to see this R for myself. Lauren kissed me goodbye, claiming she was meeting a friend for coffee. I smiled, nodded, and waited until her car pulled out. Then I grabbed my keys. Little did she know, I was about to follow her straight to the truth. I tailed Lauren's car through the Columbus suburbs, keeping my distance like a line cook watching a simmering sauce. Close enough to see, far enough not to burn. She pulled into a quaint cafe on High Street, the kind of place I'd review for its overpriced lattes and underbaked scones. I parked across the street, watching through the window as she sat down with a woman I vaguely recognized, someone from her support group. Maybe I couldn't hear them, but my food critics, I caught every detail. Lauren's nervous smile, the way she kept glancing at the door, the way the other woman leaned in, whispering. I strained to read their lips, but all I caught was thank you from the woman, followed by a hug. My heart sank. Was this just a support group thing? Had I misread everything? But then the woman said something that made my blood run cold. I owe it all to R. He's helped so many of us. R, there's again. Lauren nodded, her face tight, and handed the woman an envelope. What was inside? Money? A letter? I wanted to storm in, demand answers, but my grandfather's voice stopped me. Patience, Miles. The truth reveals itself in the shadows. So I waited, watching as the woman left, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. Lauren stayed, checking her phone, her leg bouncing under the table. I was about to leave, convinced I'd hit a dead end, when the door opened again. A man walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, with a swagger that screamed confidence. He sat across from Lauren, and her whole demeanor changed. She smiled, relaxed, touched his hand. My chest tightened. Was this R? I couldn't see his face, but I noticed the details, a silver watch on his wrist, a faint scar on his neck, the way he leaned in, too close, too familiar. They talked for an hour, and I watched, my anger simmering like a pot about to boil over. But then he said something that made Lauren pull back, her face pale. She stood, grabbed her purse, and stormed out. He followed, calling after her. And that's when I saw the name on his car's vanity plate. Ryan. Ryan. R. Ryan. The name hit me like a splash of cold water on a hot griddle, sizzling away my denial. I drove home, my mind a mess of rage and questions, but I knew I needed more than a name and a license plate. My grandfather's lessons were my anchor. Evidence, Miles. Always evidence. Back in the study, I opened Lauren's laptop again, this time diving deeper into her deleted emails. I found a thread from 6 months ago, buried in the trash folder, between her and Ryan Kessler. The subject line was blank, but the content wasn't. "You're my only hope," she'd written. "Miles can't give me what I need." His reply was smug, almost rehearsed. "I've helped dozens of women like you, Lauren. Let me spread my legacy through you." Legacy? What kind of man talks like that? I Googled Ryan Kessler Columbus, and the results painted a picture I couldn't unsee. He was a motivational speaker, a local celebrity of sorts, known for his inspirational talks on overcoming adversity. But there were other stories buried in forums and comment sections. Women claiming he'd father their children, not through clinics, but through personal arrangements. Dozens of children. My stomach churned. This wasn't just an affair. This was something unhinged, obsessive. I went back to the emails, finding more flirty messages, plans to meet, even a photo of them together, Lauren's head on his shoulder, his silver watch glinting in the light. The same watch I'd seen at the cafe. But the real bombshell was an email from 2 months ago, sent the day after Lauren's pregnancy announcement. "It worked, Ryan. I'm carrying your legacy now." Carrying his legacy. Not our miracle. His. I sat there, staring at the screen, the room spinning. My wife, my partner of 15 years, hadn't just cheated. She'd chosen this man, this egomaniac, to fulfill her dream of motherhood, knowing I couldn't. My grandfather's voice tried to steady me. The truth hides in the details, Miles, but all I could see was red. I needed to confront her, to hear her say it. But first, I needed to know why. Why him? Why this? And what else was she hiding? I waited until Lauren got home, my anger simmering like a reduction sauce, concentrated and dangerous. She walked in, humming, carrying a bag of baby clothes. Props for a lie, I realized. I let her set them down, let her kiss my cheek, let her think everything was fine. Then I said, "Sit down, Lauren. We need to talk about Ryan Kessler." Her face went white, her hands clutching the edge of the table. "Oh," she tried, but her voice cracked, betraying her. I slid the printed emails across the table, watching her eyes dart over them. "Don't," I said, my voice low, steady, like I was critiquing a dish. "I know everything. The affair, the pregnancy, his legacy." She broke then, tears streaming down her face, but I saw through it. My food critics, I catching the absence of real sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Miles," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "Why?" I demanded. "Why him?" She took a shaky breath, her hands twisting in her lap. "You don't understand what it was like, Miles. Year after year, nothing. The doctors, the tests, the pitying looks. I felt like a failure. Then I met Ryan at the support group. He was different, confident. He said he could give me what you couldn't, a child. He saw it as his purpose, helping women like me. Purpose. The word made my skin crawl. "So you slept with him?" I said, my voice flat. "You chose him over me." "It wasn't like that," she cried. "I wanted baby, Miles. Our baby. But then I found out, after all those tests, that it was you. You were the problem. And Ryan, he made me feel alive again. Alive." The word hit me like a punch to the gut. But there was more I could tell, her eyes darting away, her fingers fidgeting. "What else?" I pressed. "What are you telling me?" She hesitated, then whispered. "I didn't stop seeing him. Even after I got pregnant, I couldn't. He made me feel wanted, Miles. You didn't." I stared at her, the woman I'd loved for half my life, and saw a stranger. But then I noticed something, a new email notification on her phone from Ryan. Subject: "We need to talk. Now." I didn't read the email. Not yet. I needed to think, to breathe, to process the wreckage of my marriage. Lauren's confession played on a loop in my head. "You were the problem. He made me feel alive." Each word was a knife, twisting deeper, But my grandfather's voice cut through the haze. Never let emotions cloud the truth, Miles. Focus on the cracks. I locked myself in the study, staring at the baby clothes Lauren had left on the table. Props, I thought. A performance. My food critics, I caught every detail. The tag's still attached. The size is too small for a newborn. Was she even planning for this child? Or was it all part of the act? I wanted to scream, to smash something, but I remembered another of Grandpa's lessons. Rage is a tool, Miles. Use it, don't let it use you. So I channeled it, piecing together the timeline. The affair started over a year ago, the pregnancy 8 weeks ago, but she'd kept seeing Ryan. Why? Was it love? Obsession? Or something else? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my spiral. It was Lauren's sister, Emily, her voice soft, pleading. Miles, please. I know what she did was wrong, but think of the baby. Forgive her for its sake. Forgive her? The idea made me laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. Tell her to tell that to Ryan, I said, hanging up. But Emily's call lit a fire in me. Forgiveness wasn't an option. Not after this. I needed to expose Lauren, to make her feel the weight of her lies, not for money or revenge, but for my own sanity. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of the emails, recordings of our confrontation, even a photo of her and Ryan, his silver watch glinting like a badge of betrayal. But then I stopped, my hand hovering over the laptop. My grandfather's voice again. Evidence is power, Miles, but timing is everything. I needed to be smart, to wait for the perfect moment. And then I saw it. Another email from Ryan, this one marked urgent. Meet me at the park tomorrow. We can't let him ruin everything. Ruin everything? What else were they planning? And how far was I willing to go to stop them? Ryan's email, we can't let him ruin everything, lit a fire under me. Ruin what? Their lies? Their twisted legacy? I spent the night in the study, my anger hardening into resolve, like a sauce reducing to its essence. My grandfather's voice guided me. Evidence is power, Miles, but timing is everything. I had the emails, the recordings, the photo of Lauren and Ryan, but I needed more. I needed to catch them in the act, to expose their full plan. I decided to follow Ryan's lead, to show up at the park tomorrow, uninvited. But first, I needed to protect myself. My food critics, I caught every detail as I backed up my evidence to a cloud drive, password protected, untouchable. I even printed hard copies, stashing them in a safe at my office. Lauren thought I was clueless, but she'd underestimated me, just like a chef underestimates a critic who notices every flaw in a dish. By morning, I was ready, my plan as precise as a recipe. I kissed Lauren goodbye, feigning normalcy, and watched her leave for work. But then my phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. You don't know what you're up against, Miles. Back off. My heart raced. Was this Ryan? How'd he know I was digging? I remembered my grandfather's advice. Threats mean you're close, Miles. Keep going. So I did. I drove to the park, parking a block away, and slipped into the trees, watching the bench where Ryan had told Lauren to meet. They arrived minutes apart, Lauren's face tight, Ryan smug, his silver watch glinting in the sunlight. I recorded them, my phone zoom capturing every word I couldn't hear, every gesture. But then something unexpected happened. A woman approached them, pushing a stroller, her face glowing with gratitude. She hugged Ryan, then Lauren, and handed Ryan an envelope. My stomach twisted. Was this another of Ryan's legacies? Another woman caught in his web? I needed to know more, but as I shifted for a better angle, my foot snapped a twig. Ryan's head whipped around, his eyes scanning the trees, locking onto mine. And then he smiled, a predator's grin that told me the game was on. Ryan's smile haunted me as I drove away, my heart pounding like a drum in a quiet kitchen. He knew I was on to him, but I wasn't backing down. My grandfather's voice steadied me. When the enemy knows you're coming, Miles, hit harder. I decided it was time to expose Lauren, not privately, but publicly, where her lies couldn't hide. I organized a family gathering at our house, framing it as a baby celebration, inviting her parents, her sister Emily, my cousins, everyone who believed in our miracle. Lauren was thrilled, oblivious, decorating the living room with balloons and streamers. a performance worthy of an Oscar. But I saw through it. My food critics, I catching the cracks in her act, the way her smile faltered when I mentioned honesty in my toast. As dessert was served, my signature lemon tart, a nod to happier times, I stood, raising my glass. Before we celebrate, I said, my voice calm, there's something you all need to know. I played the recording of Lauren's confession, her voice echoing through the room. I wanted a baby, Miles. Ryan made me feel alive. Gasps filled the air, forks clattering against plates. Lauren's mother clutched her chest. Emily stared in horror. And Lauren just sat there, frozen, her face a mask of panic. But then she fought back, her voice shrill. He pushed me into it, Mom. Miles was so distant, so obsessed with his stupid reviews. I had no choice. Some heads turned to me, doubt creeping in, but I was ready. I showed the emails, the photo of her and Ryan, his silver watch glinting like a guilty verdict. This isn't about me, I said, my voice steady. It's about her lies, her betrayal. The room erupted, arguments breaking out, but I saw the tide turn. Her parents' disappointment, Emily's tears. Lauren stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me to face the fallout. But as I cleaned up the shattered remnants of our celebration, my phone buzzed. An email from Ryan. You think you've won, Miles? You have no idea what's coming. My grandfather's words echoed. The truth hides in the details. And the detail I couldn't shake? The woman with the stroller. Who was she? And what did she mean to Ryan's plan? The fallout from the gathering was immediate, like a grease fire spreading through a kitchen. Lauren moved out, crashing with Emily, while her parents called me, torn between anger and apology. But I wasn't done. Ryan's email. You have no idea what's coming. Not at me, a challenge I couldn't ignore. My grandfather's voice urged me on. When the puzzle's incomplete, Miles, find the missing pieces. I thought of the woman with the stroller, her gratitude, the envelope she'd given Ryan. Was she part of this? I needed to know how far Ryan's obsession reached. I started digging, using the names from Lauren's support folder, cross-referencing them with online forums about fertility struggles. What I found chilled me. Multiple women, all from Lauren's group, posting about a miracle man who'd helped them conceive. Their stories were eerily similar. Desperation, a charismatic stranger, a child who looked nothing like their partners. Ryan, he wasn't just Lauren's affair. He was a predator, targeting vulnerable women, seeing himself as some twisted savior. I reached out to one of the women, a single mom named Hannah, meeting her at a diner. My food critics, I caught her exhaustion, the way she clutched her coffee like a lifeline. Ryan changed my life, she said, her voice soft. Lauren introduced us. I thought he was a donor, but he keeps tabs on my son, says he's part of his legacy. Legacy? That word again. I showed her the photo of Ryan and Lauren, and her face darkened. He's not just helping, she whispered. He's planning something. He talked about reclaiming his kids someday. Reclaiming? My stomach twisted. Was this why Lauren stayed with him? Even after the pregnancy? Was she part of his plan? Or just another pawn? I offered Hannah support, promising to help, but as I left, my mind raced. If Ryan was tracking his children, what did that mean for Lauren's unborn child? I needed to warn her to protect the baby, even if it wasn't mine. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at the warehouse on 5th, Miles. Alone. Or everyone finds out the truth. The truth? What more could there be? And why did I feel like I was walking into a trap? I drove to the warehouse, my heart pounding like a pestle, grinding spices, each beat crushing my fear into focus. The place was abandoned, a relic of Columbus' industrial past, its windows dark, its air thick with dust. Ryan was waiting inside, leaning against a rusted beam, his silver watch catching the faint light. You're persistent, Miles, he said, his voice smooth, smug, like a chef who thinks his dish is flawless. I admire that. I didn't waste time. What's your plan, Ryan? What's this legacy you're so obsessed with? He laughed, stepping closer, his scar visible in the dim light. You think this is about Lauren? She just won peace, Miles. I've given dozens of women what their men couldn't. A child, a future. I'm building something eternal, A lineage that'll outlast us all. His words were unhinged, delusional, but I saw through it. My food critics I catching the cracks in his confidence. The way his hands twitched, the way he avoided my gaze. And Lauren, I pressed. What's her role? He smirked. She was desperate, Miles. Easy to manipulate. I gave her what she wanted, a child, a purpose. But she couldn't let go, even after he stopped, his smirk fading. After what? I demanded, stepping closer, my voice sharp as a knife. He sighed, like a man confessing to a minor flaw in a recipe. You want the truth, Miles? Here it is. Lauren isn't pregnant. She miscarried my child months ago. She's been faking it, wearing padding, buying baby clothes, all to keep you from leaving her. The room spun, his words hitting me like a punch to the gut. Not pregnant. Faking it. My miracle, my betrayal, my rage, all built on a lie. But my grandfather's voice steadied me. The truth hides in the details, Miles. And the detail I caught? The way Ryan's eyes darted to the door, the faint sound of footsteps outside. You're not alone, I said, my voice low. He smiled, but it was forced. You're smart, Miles. Too smart. But it's too late. The door creaked open, and Lauren stepped in, her face pale, her hands trembling. Miles, she whispered. I can explain. But Ryan's grin told me the explanation was about to get worse. Lauren's voice trembled, but I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Ryan, his predator's grin widening, as if he'd plated the perfect dish and was waiting for applause. Explain what? I said, my voice cold, my food critics eye catching every detail. Her clenched fists, the way Ryan stepped closer to her, protective, possessive. That you faked a pregnancy, Lauren? That you let me believe in a miracle, all to cover your lies. She sobbed, but I saw through it, my grandfather's lessons kicking in. Tears are distraction, Miles. Watch the actions. And her actions spoke volumes. The way she leaned into Ryan, the way he put a hand on her shoulder, claiming her. I had to, she whispered. After I lost the baby, I couldn't lose you two. Ryan cut in, his voice smooth, smug. She did it for love, Miles. You should be flattered. Flattered? The word fueled my rage, but I remembered Grandpa's advice. Rage is a tool, Miles. Use it. So I did. I turned to Lauren, my voice steady. You chose him, Lauren. You chose his delusion over our life. And now you'll face the consequences alone. I walked out, leaving them in the dust of their own lies, my evidence still safe, my plan still intact. The weeks that followed were chaos. Lauren's family cut her off, Emily apologized, and Ryan's legacy unraveled as more women came forward, exposing his obsession. I didn't pursue revenge further. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. I started over, using my critic's skills to write a memoir, Cracks in the Dish, a recipe for resilience, pouring my pain into something meaningful. But as I signed a final draft, a letter arrived, postmarked from Cleveland. Inside was a photo of a boy, maybe 5, with Ryan's eyes and a note. He's watching, Miles. Be careful. My stomach twisted. Ryan's obsession wasn't over, and neither was my fight. But for now, I'd won. Thank you for tuning into my story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world are you watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.